would love to learn a bit about how you all got into STEM and, ended up working for Arduino. So tell us all a bit about how you got here and what you do.
Shall I start with my
Sure.
story?
Sure.
All
Yeah.
right. So I was about 8 years old, and then I started coding. I didn't like playing video games, so I got this new computer in my home and started to learn programming. So that's how I started understanding how to make programs with working with my boys, child boys. And then from that moment on, I never stopped learning how to make things with computers. So after many, many years, then fast forward, and I played with, while I was studying at university, I created a startup, those things, experimenting with technology and finding a purpose or turning technology into products. So then at some point I joined the 3D printing, and that was a life changer for me, because, that those were the early years when a community of strange people were meeting online from their bedrooms, from their homes, garages, and so on, saying, I'm building this machine that spits out plastic. The world didn't know about this thing that would have changed, our story of makers. So I joined this movement, and then in order to build my own 3D printer, I learned soldering, and also actually I burned so many boards. So I wish that someone could teach me how to solder properly without damaging all those boards.
But you just dived right in, and that's great. You had a project, you had a goal in mind, and then you were just going to learn all the skills in order to do that. So
exactly.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that at the same time, I learned how to solder and how to desolder.
Exactly.
Yes, desoldering is also very handy.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
like
funny.
Control Z for soldering mistakes. And then after that time, I started spending a lot of time in that community. So I started working on open source project for 3D printers that later become quite known, called Slicer. So I dedicated part of my life basically developing the 3D printing technology and community. Then fast forward many years, I was starting to organize maker fairs in Europe, events, and so on. And then I had this opportunity to join Arduino. But for me, it's like when your favorite band calls you on stage and you say, me? Shall I come there, play the bass with you? I said, yes, okay. So that's my story, and that's how I ended up in Arduino, combining a job with a passion.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And what was your educational background like before you got into 3D printing and stuff like that?
That's gonna confuse the audience because I studied architecture.
Okay. No, so that's one of the things though that I really like to point out is that so many of our guests do not have degrees in engineering or science or anything like that, and yet have, come into this amazing community and electronics related professions from a direction that's totally different. And it's more common than you might think. And I'm trying to kind of remove that as a stumbling block in people's minds. Like, oh, I can't do that because my background is in this other thing, So
I often talk about this with my maker friends to understand if this plays a role in the way one learns. And of course, while a formal education, tech education, has so many advantages that I'm discovering every day now that I need these skills. At the same time, often university gives you answers before you formulate the questions.
Yes.
So it's not the maker approach where you start with a goal and you fail, you try, you fail, and then you end up with something maybe, but during the journey you have learned so many things.
Yeah.
That's what makes a maker.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it that I hadn't really thought of before, that it gives you the answers before you have the questions. And I absolutely can relate to that. There are so many things that I, learned in college that I was just like, why am I learning this? I don't ever see why I would need to use this. And then, 2 or 3 years later, once I got into my first job, I was like, oh my God, I could really use that right now. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. Cool. Awesome. Well, how about Anna?
Yeah, my story is slightly different, I would say. I will start from education. I'm a former lawyer, so I studied law, but never been into any court. No, my background has been for many years being into creative agencies and advertising. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think, 2012, and I came across Arduino for some interactive installations we were doing for big brands. And I started thinking I wanted to learn, of course, firstly, and then to have a job that possibly could change people's life and make them better. So fast forward 10 years more or less, I had the opportunity to join Arduino for marketing and advertising and creative purposes. So I'm not really a DIYer. I'm not into STEM in that sense, but I learned soldering with this kit. So now I'm former. I can solder now, and it's very therapeutic. There's a user, Cedar, saying, been soldering for many, many years, and it's very therapeutic. I can say, yes, it's super Zen activity.
Thank
so
you.
yeah.
Yeah. Totally. And I like kits for the somewhat instant project gratification where it's a very finite fixed thing. You solder it up, and if you've done everything right, it should work. And you don't have, it's nice for me when I'm in the middle of some other big project that's taking a lot of time that I don't feel like I'm making much progress on. It's like, oh, I can just solder a little kit together, and then I feel good, like I've done something, like I've made something, I've completed a project. Then I can go back to the project that I'm stuck on and have a little bit of a fresh mind for it. Yeah.
Very true.
Cool. How about you, Giuseppe?
And my story is a very, very long. I start with
cool.
No, but reduction in small.
No, tell us the long story. I'm terrible at doing short stories.
I started working with my grandfather in the age of 4 years. And my grandfather is an R&D for television, this old and the radio. But this in 4 years, he speak with my grandfather and is open the home phone, the old home phone, and disconnect the microphone and the battery, and the connection microphone with the battery, and speak with my grandfather. Why not sound? Why not ring? My grandfather, let's go. Okay, start study, and here I can start the the electronics part, the maker, and study in university in engineering electronic. And my first production in amplifier audio in 10 years, and the start production in 100 pitches for all world. My opinion and convenient in Arduino is a very, very passion for electronic and software, and a very, very important transmission this passion with all guys.